Well, hello everybody. Welcome to this video, which will be a bit more of a tutorial really on how to create this spreadsheet for yourself. But before we start that, I'll do a really quick overview just of what it looks like and how it works. So the three orange tabs here are our three dashboard tabs, which you can change between by selecting the shortcut in the bar at the top. The first tab here is capital, which really summarises, I guess, the purchase versus the current value for the holdings in the portfolio. And we can use the custom slices on the left-hand side. So let's say we only want to have a look at our dividend shares that focus on dividend. You can see here all the charts change based on each category. If we select them all again, we might say, well, look, let's just have a look at the, for example, USA shares, and here we go, it filters again. So the slices are all linked to all of the tables, and at the top here we have a high level summary just of our purchase value, current value, and the current gain or loss. The second tab, which is the dividends, really focuses on dividend performance of the shares. So again, we have a similar slicer to the first tab. This first chart here really shows the forecast dividend yield by share. This table here is the top 15 by actual dividend paid. So obviously that's affected by how many shares of each company that I have, whereas this here is a pure yield metric. And at the bottom here, it's just a handy little tracking log of how many dividends I actually receive each month, which goes along here. And you can see here the actual yield that I'm getting. And there'll always be a lag between the two, just because obviously when you buy a share, you don't get paid the dividend straight away. So there'll always be a lag, but that's why I like to track both. And then the last tab really here is really the whole reason why I started this dashboard was really around tracking my, tracking my performance towards achieving my goal of replacing my 9-to-5 salary with dividends. So you can see I'm 14.5% of the way there, so doing really well and really happy. So the top one here really is tracking how much of my salary I've actually replaced, and I've got a fairly ambitious hopeful plan, and then here it's just tracking the actual amount of money invested, and then how it's performing market-wise, and obviously my fairly aggressive forecast investment plan. And then on the left here it's got the dividend estimation and per year, which I really like looking at it. Well, what is it per month? 1100 per month. I quite like using a month metric because it just aligns with my thoughts around being paid and so forth. And then the bottom here, I've actually just tracking my total dividends actually received. Okay, then the next three tabs here really are the base data, which we'll talk about as we obviously create them. And then the blue tabs here are the actual pivot tables that we use to create the charts and the dashboards. Okay, so we'll jump into actually now creating the dashboard. Okay, and while it will be more exciting, obviously, to start with the dashboards, we don't have any data yet. So what we'll do is we'll start with the three tabs here. So I'll just open up a new Excel spreadsheet, so we can start from scratch, and you can follow along as you desire. So I'll move that out of the way over here. And what we'll do is first of all, let's just create the tabs that we need. So the first tab will be the capital tab that we want to create. Next up will be our dividends, and then next up will be our passive income tab. Now I'll make these all orange just to represent that they are the dashboards. You can obviously choose whatever color you desire. So next up we'll create the three data tables. So we have the portfolio, we have the dividend received, and then we have the actual trades tab. And then, sorry, what have I done here? That should be yellow, so I'll make all of these yellow for data tables. There we go, so now we've got three of those and three of those, and now we'll create tables for the pivot tables, which we'll create shortly. So we'll call this the first one capital comparison, which will compare the value purchase versus current value of our shares. The forecast dividend, which we'll use to have a look at the future dividends of each stock. Then we'll create the actual dividends, which is where we'll track our actual dividend payments. And the last one will be our passive income, which is where we're going to be tracking our progress towards our goals. So I'll make all of these blue, just so that we easily understand which one's which. So look, I'm sure you want to start with the dashboard tabs. It's probably not the best place to start though. So let's start with the actual tabs that hold the data, because that's really where we need to focus on before we can actually build anything really. So and again, you may want to export this from your trades list, or you probably already have this recorded in some form. But the way I do it is I have a date, and then I have the share name, and then I have how many shares I actually purchased, the cost per share that I spent, the brokerage for that transaction. So I'll start with these three. Now, what I'll do is I'll just bring across, let's just say, for example, we bought the other day, 20th of November, 22. I'm using Australian European date month format. Obviously, you use whatever suits you. Now, what's fantastic about this is if you haven't used stock data types before in Excel, if you have, obviously skip forward a minute or so, but if you haven't, it's really, really powerful, and I'll quickly just explain. So let's say, for example, we bought some Tesla stock. So what you can do is, we know the ticker for Tesla is TSLA, and we can type that in and then click on data and then stocks. And then you'll see here what it's done is it's actually converted it into a stock data type, which you'll see shortly is really, really powerful and useful for doing lots of different things. You can also use shortcut codes. So, and also with the exchange. So for example, if you're in Australia, I recently bought some Rio. So you can use the ASX, which is our ticker code for the ASX. And then you can use Rio, which is the ticker code of the actual share. And then if we convert that into stocks, there you go. And what's great too is if I do type in just Rio, oops, it's already picked it up. If I just type in Rio down here and then press on stocks, it will have a guess. And if it's not sure, it will give me a list over here. So it will give me actual list of what it thinks I might want to draw from. So obviously here it's listed on the New York Stock Exchange and also the ASX. So I could have chosen which one was appropriate. So quite a useful little tool. So let me just delete that for now. And then over here, obviously we'll just type in how many shares. So let's just say I bought 100, well, probably more realistically 10 Tesla shares and maybe 100 Rio shares. And let's just say for Tesla, they cost me $270. And for Rio, I was trying to think what Rio's around. Is it around $100 from memory? So let's say $100. Brokerage, I use IBKY, which I used to use ComSec, but I now use IBKY just for the cheaper brokerage. So for US, I'm paying about $1, and for Australian, I'm paying about $6.60 per trade. So what we do now is we now add in, and I'll make these just green because we've actually entered this data here. So green means that we've actually entered it ourselves. So now we'll type in here purchase cost, which is what it actually cost us to purchase the data. And then here across here I'll have currency, and then I'll have purchase cost, but using AUD. So for example, I do trade across multiple exchanges, so I like to convert everything back to Australian dollars, just so it's really simple and easy. If you're only trading in, say, USD in America, you might want to you can just leave it at purchase cost because everything will be in USD. But because I do purchase quite a bit internationally, because Australia is quite a skewed exchange, I do more recently purchase a lot more internationally. So purchase cost is really simply, we just go plus the number of shares times the cost that we actually spent, and then we want to add on the brokerage. And then you can see there it's that value, that 2,701. So what we can do too is we can obviously once we've typed everything in, but I'll just for speed of time, we can format the cells, pick currency. I like this particular one, and then we go. You see, it's now converted it to that, and we could do the same thing here as well with the cost, convert it to a currency, just so it's a bit neat and nice and tidy. So here, now this is where using the stock, data type is really, really useful. So what we can do is we can go plus and then move across to Tesla and then do a dot. And what that does is it gives us a list of attributes we can draw from that particular stock. So here we want currency, so I can double click on currency and hit enter, and you see it has automatically picked up that it's in US dollars, and you see here it's automatically picked up that the currency is in AUD. So super, super useful. So what I'll do as well is I'll just put in a USD flag over here, and I think converting to USD to Australian, because that's the way that I'm converting it, it's about 0.77 from memory. So what we can do now is just do an if statement plus if. So if that equals USD, because I want to convert from USD. So if that's true, I want to take the purchase cost and divide it by the rate, and I'll hit F4 just to lock in that cell so it doesn't change. But if it's false, I obviously just want to grab that value because it's already in Australian dollars, and then I can close my brackets. You can also too, if it's not true, you can then do another. If, say, for example, I also had, which I do, have British pounds or some other currency, euro, you can then do another if statement. So then say, if it's false, say, if it's actually euro, then do this. And if it's not, then obviously then it's Australian or so forth. So you can nest it as you desire, but just to keep it simple, pretty straightforward. If you get stuck, look, leave me a comment and I'm happy to reach out to you and give you a hand, but fairly straightforward, really. And so I'll bring that down, and let's just format that as well into currency. And there you go. So you see what it's done is it's converted everything into Australian dollars. Nice and neat. Now I do always convert the column headings into yellow if it's something that's been calculated, just so I know not to accidentally overwrite it. Now, the other thing that's really important here as well is just to convert it to a table. So you'll grab all of your data, whatever you've put in, and if you don't know how to do this, it's Control-T is the shortcut, and that then converts this data into a table. So it does have headers across the top, so I'll leave that selected. We press OK, and there we go. Our data is now into a table. So what I'll do is, just for speed, I will actually grab my data from my main spreadsheet, and I'll now just paste this in. I'm going to paste as values just because I don't want it trying to look back onto my other spreadsheet, but obviously we saw how it all did the calculations there, pretty straightforward. Okay, so there we have the trades pasted in. So these are all of my actual trades. I will just change this back to date format. And there we go. Now look, I have pasted it in, as I said, as values, just to avoid it trying to link back to my other spreadsheet, which will cause issues later. But you saw how we calculated everything there. So now let's go across to portfolio. Now, what's really cool is, if you don't know, is we can use a little function in Excel called unique. So what unique does is I pick, I'll pick from there down. What it does is it basically gives you a list of unique items from another list, because obviously here we've purchased Tesla or Rio or CSL or Vanguard or Beta shares multiple times, because the way I invest is I dollar cost average. So there's multiple instances of trades, and all I really want for my portfolio tab is an actual list of each individual company. So I can use this unique function, and it fills it down. So what I'll do is I'll copy it across, just those values across into my portfolio tab over here, and I'll just paste as special because we don't want it obviously updating. And there's different ways of doing this, and you could actually leave it as a unique table, but I find later on with pivot tables and things, if it's not in a table, it gets you have more problems later than you do. So it just means that you have to, if you buy something you haven't bought before, you'll just need to manually update this with a new row. But you'll see we have to do that anyway, as we go through anyway, to fill its details in. So what I do is I have currency, and I use the exact same function I used before. I just use the dot, and then I could obviously just grab it from the other tab, but I just like to keep it simple and just grab it from there. And then what I do is I use what I call thematic sector. Now you can call it whatever you like, and you can do whatever you want with this, but I break mine really down into it's blockchain, which I'm going to sell when I have when I have a second, commerce, dividend, finance, health, an index fund, mobility, property, resource, and technology. But you can use whatever categories you like and want to track it by. They're the ones that I pick. But it made sense to me. But again, just choose whatever it is that you like. We'll then go across to region, purpose. I can't type today. Purpose, type, and then the 2021 dividend. Okay, so let's go through them. So the first one here is currency, so we can just copy that down and there we go, it's automatically filled that in. Now, as I mentioned, thematic sector. So this is actually an Asian company that hasn't done very well at all. Wish I'd never bought it, but I did. So I'm gonna put this down as technology as my sector. So we'll go through just as an example. Newcrest Mining is definitely a resource company. Beta shares. So this is a dividend fund. Beta shares, Asia Tech Tigers will be technology. So you see how I'm just going through and just categorizing each of them into a particular one. This one here, Beta shares, this will be a mobility. It's based on electric vehicles and sort of future mobility technology, which I'm quite passionate about. And this one here, iShares S&P 500 ETF. I would call this an index fund because it's an index ETF that tracks some sort of index. But again, you can change these as however you desire, really, completely up to you. Now, region, what I do here is I use the region, not where the shares are listed, but because I actually use the currency for that. I use this as to where the company or the ETFs funds are invested. So, for example, here I can use USA, global, Asia, Australia, Europe, or emerging markets are the categories that I use. But again, you can choose whatever you like. So here I would put down Asia, Newcrest. I think it is actually global, but I'll put down Australia for now. But I'm pretty sure they're global. So this one here, what I'll do is it's S&P 500, so that would be USA companies. This will be Asia. This will be global, I believe. And this again is USA. So you see, you just go down and basically select the region. Now, purpose is something that you can choose to have or not have. It just helps me because sometimes I'll buy a share for capital growth, not for dividend. And I just like to, help remind myself that I didn't buy this for a yield when I look at its yield and see it's really, really low or non-existent. So, for example, this here I definitely bought for growth. Newcrest I've bought for growth. This I would have bought for dividend. This I would have bought for growth. This I would have bought for growth. And this one here, just for example, I might have said it's actually I bought it for growth and dividend. So you can go through on your own list and choose how you like. Now, type is simply is it a stock, which these are, or is it an ETF? So really, it's just stock or ETF. So these are all ETFs you can see, and that again is an ETF. So just a simple way of tracking it. Now, this last column here, what it's doing is now we can debate. You could debate this either way, and neither way is right, and neither way is wrong. I think some people like to use a forecast dividend per share or a dividend yield. I actually like to use the previous year's actual dividend that was paid. Now, I know this has obviously got flaws, and so does forecasting, because obviously with forecasts it hasn't happened, and with historic at least I feel that that's what did happen. Dividends get cut though, so that's not necessarily the right way either. You can do it either way. I use a historic previous calendar year's dividend. So for example, I know that this paid 0 dividends. Newcrest Mining probably paid a little bit. Maybe it was 50 cents or something, maybe twice a year. So I might do 50 cents twice a year, which is $1. This might have paid me, maybe it paid 12 monthly. I know it didn't, but if it did, say, pay 12 monthly every month, and let's just say it paid 30 cents a month, is how I could do it. Or I could actually just, obviously if it changed by month, you'd obviously put that in. So you can get the data from, if you just Google it, you'll find 1,000 websites that have historic dividend data. Pretty easy to do. So all I'm doing there really is just manually, and it is a manual process once a year that I have to do. In fact, I might even look at some web scraping options in a future video, but for now I've just pretty much manually gone in and just pulled out the 2021 dividend that was paid for each one. So now what I want to do, so these ones here, I'll again give them a heading of green because they're columns that I actually have entered. Whereas here I'm starting to now get into ones that, sorry, green, this is green as well because I've obviously entered that into my spreadsheet. Now, because some of them are USD and some of them are Australian, what I do again is I just convert it back to AUD just so it's nice and simple. And again, I use that if statement we used before. If it's USD, I want to divide it by that value that I had before, which is, sorry, I've written it now, but divided it by that exchange rate, exactly the same as what we did previously. So just I'm converting it basically back into AUD. And then what we can do here, okay, so now we've converted it all into Australian dollars. Now what we'll do is we'll add 3 new columns, which are shares, purchase cost, and yield. So to get the number of shares, all we need to do is just go plus sum if, and we're looking at the row here. But before we do that, let's actually just convert this into a table. So let's select all of the data that we have here and Control T. That will convert it into a table. Away we go. Okay, so we go back here now. Now we go plus sum if. Now the range we're looking at is actually the share name, and the criteria we're looking for is this particular company, and we want to sum the number of shares. So we'll grab the number of shares, click in there, close the brackets, and okay, it doesn't. Let me just get rid of the headers. So what we can do is we can just do it this way. I'll delete headers out. So I've done this the long way, but so we're looking in table 2 at the share name. We're looking for that value, and we want table 2, the actual number of shares is what we're summing. So I'll just delete that. So that's it there. Hit enter. Now why don't you like that? That's because I've got 2 of those there. Delete that, and there we go. So you see what it's done is it's looking up table 2. Now we probably should have actually gone into here, table design, and called this our trades table. So let's just do that now. And that now is known as our trades table. So when we come back here, you see now it's looking at the trades table. Just makes it a bit cleaner and simpler. So we can now just copy that down, and you see what it's doing is it's very quickly just summing up how many shares of each company in our portfolio we have. Now we'll do exactly the same thing here with purchase cost. So let's just go sum if. We're going to grab from the range of here. So we'll do it this way. So it's basically just grabbing, see now the actual correct formula. And then we're grabbing, we're looking at this one here, and then we are summing, this time not from shares, but we're actually grabbing from purchase cost. So I'll just grab for the first one there, go to the end, and then close the brackets. And then you see what it's done now is now it's actually summed up all the purchase costs for each individual one. So I'll just convert these to currency, just to keep it nice and tidy. There we go. Straightforward. So pretty quickly, we've now summarised all of our trades into a consolidated portfolio table. So quite quick and easy, really. And what's great too is that as we add things into the table, when we convert this back to a table, you'll find that it'll automatically update as well, which is pretty handy. So you won't need to manually update this unless you actually purchase a new share that you don't have currently in your list. Then you would need to go in and obviously re-enter these details like we did before. Okay, so next up what we're going to do is for our yield. So we know what the dividend per share was here. So for example, we'll be using this value here. So this is the actual dividends we receive per share. We then multiply it by how many shares we actually own. So that's that then gives you the total dividend that we receive. But we need to divide it by how much we actually purchased the shares for. So if I convert that now to percentage, you'll see now it's giving us a yield based on the purchase cost, which is how I like to track it, because that's what we actually paid. So therefore, that in my mind is what we should use rather than the current value. It makes more sense to use the purchase cost. So that then gives us the yield. Now, just if you remember in the dashboards I showed before, we had different colors for different levels of dividend. You don't need to do this, but if you want to, you can. So what I'll do is I'll do one column here, which will be for yields less than 5%, and one column here, which will be for a yield which is greater than 5%. Oops, 5%. So what we can do is we just use a really simple if statement. So plus if that is less than 5%, I want you to grab it, and if it's not, just return me with nothing at all. And if we now put that into percentage, and I'll copy that down, you'll see what it does is it basically just, if it's less than 5, it actually puts it into this column. And you can choose whatever level that you like for your kind of, I guess, target threshold. So I'll do the same for above 5. So if that is greater than 5% this time, I want to grab it. And if it's not greater than 5, then I want to return nothing. So when we copy this down, you'll see what happens is then it fills in the other values, which are above 5%. And we'll use this later when we do some of our charts, because I like just to colour the differences. Now, what we'll do, next column across, we'll now work out our current price of the share. And what's great if you, again, with using the stock data type, is we can just do the same thing again. We go plus, pick on that, do a dot, and then we can just go down to price. And that will give us the current price for that particular share. So you see here straight away, very quickly, we've got the current price of all of those shares. I'll just convert that. Oops, sorry, I'll convert that back to currency, just my preferred format, but with a, there we go. Okay, so now what we need to do is now need to work out the current value. So obviously that's the price per share, right? So current value, pretty simply, obviously it's just the current price multiplied by how many shares do we have. So that then gives us the current value. Now, if you're trading across multiple currencies like I am, that's in whatever the home currency is of that particular share. So we'll do the same thing as before. We've got current value, and then we'll convert it back to AUD or whatever your desired currency is. And we'll use that same thing we did before with the if statement. So if, if that equals USD, for example, then if it's true, I want to divide that by 0.77. Obviously, you would reference that back to your fixed cell that we have, and if it's false, then you'd pick the current value because then it's in Australian dollars. And again, you can nest it as you desire. So that's pretty much where we go with that. Now, the last one over here we'll do is just the forecast dividend. Now, because I want this in actual dollars, right? Not just a percentage. So pretty straightforward, really. All we're doing really is multiplying the yield by the purchase cost in Australian dollars, which is that one there. And that really should have an AUD after it as well. There we go. So all we're doing there is that's my forecast dividend in Australian dollars, AUD, based on 2021 values, so which we'll use a bit later. So that pretty much, now what we'll do is we'll put it into a table. So we'll go just to the end, hit Control T again. Now it's in a table with headers. Zoom out just a tiny bit. And again, we like to do, have green as the things we actually manually enter. And then, so from here, these are all calculated cells. So we'll make these, make them yellow, just so we know that they're actually calculated or extracted values from somewhere. So there we go. That is the portfolio table. Okay, so now we'll move on to our next tab, next of our third data tables, which is the dividend received tab. Now, undoubtedly from your own broker, you will have got some sort of, you can extract some sort of list of your dividends, or I'm sure you're already tracking them in some way. So the way it works for me is I just do a pay date. I don't worry about ex-dividend dates particularly. So I'm not doing any sort of trading around ex-dividend dates, but so I really only care about when I actually receive the dividend. So what I do here is I do actually have the quantity, because that just helps me if I ever need to go back and look at, well, how many shares did I hold at that time when I got the dividend. I then do a dividend per share, and then an amount. Now mine luckily converts everything back to Australian dollars, so I don't need to do any more sort of conversion here. So I'll just copy across my actual data from my actual spreadsheet. So I'll just paste it as values for now, just so otherwise it will just cause me some issues with trying to link back to the other spreadsheet. But obviously you wouldn't do that. So this, sorry, is date, and then there we go. So it's pretty much what we do, but just for formatting later in the dashboard, I will do a year and a month cell here, just because I've had some challenges with trying to get the formatting looking nice. So we just do a year here, which just pulls across the year that share is in, and then for the month, you can use a little formula just called text, and we grab the actual date. I think just the way that mine imports it from, because it's dumped from a CSV, but if you have problems, this is how you convert it back to a month with 4 M's, 3 M's. And we close that, and then you see it gives me the month. So if I copy that down, it's giving me the year that the dividend was paid in, and then the actual month that it was paid. So again, we'll convert this into a lovely table. Control T, has headers, and there we go. So now we've got a, and I'll make these green just because it means that we've actually entered the data ourselves. And then these two are obviously calculated, so we'll leave them as blue. And that's really all we need to do for the dividends table. Again, it will depend on how yours are extracted or pulled out of your broker's database. So now we've actually finished doing our 3 main tabs that hold the data we need to now go and create. So that shouldn't be blue, that should be yellow. Yellow, there we go. So now we've completed these 3. We're now ready to start creating some dashboards and our pivot tables. Okay, so for our first pivot table, we'll be looking at the capital comparison tab here, so which is currently blank. So what we do is we'll go across to portfolio, and we can pick anywhere in the table really and go insert pivot table from table range, and then I want to pick an existing spot, so I've picked that, and let's stick it into say the top left of this tab. And there we go. So now we've got the pivot table fields, and we can start to select what we want to do. So what we need to do really here now is start to build the pivot table. So what I want to do is I want to actually have my thematic sector as the first one in my row. So that will now give me the thematic sector. But next up, we want to have the actual share name. So then that gives us a list, you see, of the thematic sector and the actual share name. And the values we want to look at, we want to have a look at purchase cost, obviously is how much we spent to buy them, and then we want to have a look at the current value, both obviously in our AUD. As you can see now pretty quickly, we've got a table of each thematic sector, the shares, the purchase cost, and the current value, so pretty quick. So what we can do is we'll just quickly do some formatting just to help our tables later. So I want to do a tabular form just so it breaks it out into different columns, just so it's a bit easier to follow. I am going to also get rid of all of my subtotals and gram totals, so I'll turn them off as well, just so it's got no totals, just so it's a nice clean table. I will also format these just so that they're in currency. I'm not going to show decimal places, just to keep it a bit neater and tidier. So that pretty much is our first table that we need to develop. So why don't we go across and actually start to build the capital dashboard. So you can either use the background, page layout, and then background, and pick something from your computer, or you can choose your own background. I just find it a little bit easier just to grab a bit of a range and actually just make it black. I think I just find it easier, to be honest. Just a little bit easier way of doing it. So obviously you don't need to go as far as you can see, but that's that. So, and what I like to do, and again, you can design this whatever you like. And I'm definitely not a designer. I'm an engineer, but so the way I like to have just a tab at the top that shows me my I guess a little shortcut. So we'll do a new box, and we'll basically do it across the top of our screen. Probably going a little bit too far there, but that's okay. Looks like I'm going to now move it so it sits exactly in the top left-hand corner. So that's my tab that I'm going to use. So I'll insert a text box. If we go over here, now this text box, I want it to say capital because we're on the current capital tab. I'll just move this up here. Now you can choose whatever fonts and formats and things that you like. I'll just use this font for now. But again, you can use whatever you like. Maybe 18 font seems like a decent sort of size. I'll center that in there. And what we might actually do is we'll just duplicate that, and we'll put our second one in over here, which we know is going to be dividends. So let's do that now. Dividends, and then we'll duplicate that again. And we'll now call this last one passive. Call it whatever you like, passive. So that's my three. What I'll do, I'll grab them all, and I'll just, because I look a little bit OCD sometimes, I'll just align them all top, just so they're all lined up nicely. Now, what we'll do too is we'll also insert another little shape, which will just be, it can be whatever you like really. Let's just choose this because it's got the curved edges. Let's pick it to be about the right sort of size so it covers each one. That looks pretty good. And let's make it any color you like: white, yellow, green, blue, purple. It's entirely up to you. So what I'll do is I'll send this to the back, and then I'll send this to the back so it's behind it, and then I can now place that over a capital. It's a little bit, I might actually change that to be white, I think. And then let's change the text to be, let's say, that blue. Oh, I didn't pick the whole thing, did I? Of course. There we go, blue. Yeah, I like that better. There we go. So let's just move that so it's a little bit more centered. So that's basically the top of our little dashboard. So what we can do is I'll just grab this text box, Control D to duplicate it, and we'll just do over here purchase value, because we want to know how much we've actually spent on our shares. Now we'll make this a little bit smaller. Maybe let's go with 16, and we'll put that just there. Oops, a little bit higher. We will duplicate that, and we want this to be current value. Current value, and we'll duplicate that yet again, and we want this to be gain loss, don't we? So gain loss percentage, for example. So we probably need to move these across just to give ourselves a little bit more room. Purchase value. Now what I'll do is I'm actually going to grab this white box, duplicate it, and just stick duplicate it again, and put it, in fact we should have done that first, shouldn't we? Put that in there, duplicate it again, put this in there, and then let's just move these across just so we can get the spacing a bit better. Let's put that there. Obviously you can play with these to make it look as neater than I am, but I'm just trying to do this quicker than neater, just so we can get the video as short as possible. but you can obviously pause and play with that. So that's pretty much the top tab of our dashboard. So it's starting to take place. It's looking really good. So now we go back to our little pivot table over in capital comparison, and we want to actually now create a chart. So let's create a pivot chart. So we will do a clustered column because we want to show the purchase and the current. So pretty quickly what it's done is it's given us a table. We just move the up here. So it's now given us a, as you can see, a table which has got the total value of purchase. Now, National Grid, what I'm going to do actually, I'm just going to delete this out of my data, of my portfolio, just because it's actually in pence, not in pounds. So I do actually have to just in some of my if statements, I've had to divide it, but just for simplicity, I'm just going to delete National Grid out because otherwise it will just make everything look a bit crazy. So, but obviously, if you do have something in pence, you can just all you do is just divide it by 100 really using an if statement. If you get stuck, please drop me a message and I'm happy to help. See now it's looking much better. If I just refresh now, go data, refresh all, you'll see now it will update the chart. It looks a lot better. So I'm just going to Control X that and move that across to here. So I'll paste that in here, Control V, and here we go. So now we're starting to come together. So I want this really to cover the majority of this tab, just because it's probably one of my things that I do refer a lot to. So now, next thing we need to do is really grab some slices. So I'll go back over here, and you see up here on Pivot Table Analyze, Insert Slicer. So we want to grab the thematic sector, the currency, we want to grab the region, the type, and you could grab purpose if you wanted to track that as well. I'm not going to though. And that is pretty much all we need to grab. We go OK. And then now it's given us the slices. So let's grab those. I'm just going to Control X and bring them over here. Control V, move them up here. Now, we'll format these in a second, but I want this to be at the top, really. Come down a little bit. I want my probably region to be next, I think. It's probably the one that I would use the most next. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll just grab all of them. And I don't really need a heading, because A, it takes up a lot of space, which I don't probably have. And B, I don't think we really need it. So let me get rid of the heading. And I will also drop show items deleted from the data source, just because if we change things later, it will keep things that aren't actually there. So if I now go OK, see what it's done is it's made them a bit smaller, which means we can shrink things up a little bit more. I can bring that across, probably to there, bring that up a little bit, bring that across to match up with that. And now let's bring down the actual type that we're looking at. So I'll bring that up. I'll bring this down. Shrink that across. I've obviously made that slightly too small because it's got the drop down arrow. Oops, I'm grabbing the wrong one, aren't I? There we go. I'll grab all of those again. You see it's just a little bit fiddly just to get it the right size. There we go. Now this one comes up here. And I'll just shrink this up to there. Oops, a little bit too much. There we go. Now I'll grab this one and I'll bring this down to here. And I'll also shrink this up and then make that the same width. So now, see we've got our slices, and you can see straight away it's already working because it's grabbing from that, grabbing from the pivot table, and it's selecting it as we go. So it's already working, which is pretty cool. So I can pick, for example, just Australian shares, and there we go, Australian shares. So now let's tidy up the table a little bit. I don't like the field sitting on there. So if we go across to format, I think it is, or is it here? Yeah, field buttons. So we can actually remove hide all. which gets rid of all of these. Let's compress up the legend. Now we could actually rename these too if you wanted to. You could actually just rename these if you wanted. I might make the chart a bit bigger in the space. Looking pretty good. So now if we go into format, we can actually put no fill, which will then get rid of the background completely. And we also don't, we also don't want, you might want to have a line, you might not want to have a line. So I will on the legend put that in the top corner here. I will actually do a fill on that just because it pops out from behind the grid line. So if I do a black fill, you see it pops out. I will pick a white text just so it pops a little bit more. Pick on both. And then I'll do the same here. I'll click on the x-axis white text and then the y-axis white text. And then you see there pretty quickly, it's looking pretty good. Now, I will grab one of these just for my heading and we'll duplicate it and just pop it down here. And let's just type in here purchase versus current value. There we go. So now we've got our table. Now, the last thing here is actually the slices. The default slices look pretty horrific, to be honest. So what you can do is you can pick one that you like from the list. You know, you can choose whatever you like. Or you might actually want to choose your own template. So you can actually right-click, duplicate, and then you can pick your own format, which is what I did for mine. But again, you know, just pick whatever you like. Really, it's purely an aesthetic thing. It doesn't change any of the functionality. So I would make them all the same. And then look, I'm pretty happy with that. I think it looks great. I'm happy with that. It looks great. So there we go. So that's the first part of that table. Okay, on to the next charts we want to put on below. Let's go back to our capital comparison. So we need to create a new pivot table. So what I'll do is I'll go to the portfolio. Let's again go insert pivot table from table range, existing worksheet, and let's pick a spot just up here, for example. Perfect, and go OK. So now what we've done is we've created a pivot table from the same original data source, which you'll see is important for later when we start trying to link the slices together. So this one here, we want to show the, we'll do a little pie chart just showing the purchase cost by thematic sector. So all we need to do is grab thematic sector and then we'll do the purchase cost as a value. So there we go. So what we can do now is we can now go pivot chart, do a pie chart, and then there we have the new chart. So what we'll do is we'll now go grab this, Control X, bring it across here. I might need just to shuffle this up a little bit more, just so we can fit this in. Now I'm going to get rid of the header. Don't need that. I'm going to also get rid of the fill buttons. I don't want any fill buttons, just to maximize the space of the pivot chart. I might just squash this up a little. Whoops, not the legend. Let's just move the legend across. Because we want it to really fit down here, really. So let me just squish this up, fit it in there. We'll squish it in a little bit more. Let's make that a little bit wider. There we go. So, and I'll do the same thing as before. I'll design, format, make it a black see-through, and there we have it. So now we've got a, now what you'll notice is that if I click on Dividend, you see that this doesn't actually change, the percentage down here. So what we need to do is we need to actually link that table to these slices. So what I need to do is I need to click on the slices. We really should do this at the end when we have all the tables in, but I'll just show you now. Slicer settings. No, we have to do it for each one. I'll do it for one, then we'll come back and do it later. Slicer settings. Sorry, no, report connections. I'm sorry. Maybe I can do it for everything in one go. Report connect. No, I can't. Okay, so we pick on the slicer. We go into slicer, report connections. Now, I do want to grab both of these, right? So if I click that, Now if I do this, you see how now it automatically changes based on obviously it's 100%, but if I picked, for example, 3 of them, you'll see that it will change. So it's now linked, both those pivot tables are now linked back to this slicer. So obviously we'll need to do it for all of them, but let's wait till we've got all the charts in, and then we'll link them all in one go, just to make it nice and simple. So the next one we want to do is we'll go back here again. We want to create now a new pivot table. So we go to our portfolio, insert pivot table. We want to pick where we put it. So let's stick it. Let's put it, say, just down here, give us a bit of space. Okay. Now this one here, we're going to have this to be our type. And let's do region. So region, and we want purchase cost. So now you see we've exactly the same as what we've just done above. And let's just, while we're on a roll, let's do the next one as well. Insert pivot table. We want it to be in a specific spot so we can find it. Let's put it down here. And okay, and then this one here is going to be currency, and then purchase cost, and then we've still got one more to go, which is the type. So we go back to portfolio, insert pivot table, from table range, and we will, existing worksheet, let's put it also down here, and then this one here is going to be using the type. The type and the purchase cost as the values. There we go. So now we've got all of our tables in, but we also wanted to do one on the bottom right, which is basically just a bar chart showing the purchase versus current value for each thematic sector. So I'll come back here again. I'll insert a new pivot table. So existing worksheet, and I'll stick that just down here. Okay, and now what we want to do is we want to pick the actual thematic sector, and then we want to do the purchase cost and the current value as our little table. There we go. So see, now we've got all of our tables. So we've already done this bar chart. Let's now create this one, and we do it exactly the same as the other one, really. So I'll probably speed this up in the video, to be honest. Pivot chart, we want this to be a bar. Let's just do that. That's that one there. Do the same thing here. Pivot table, pivot chart, want it to be a pie. That's that one there. And then the last one here is this one. Pivot chart, want it to be a pie. And then for this last one down here, this will actually be a bar chart. So pivot table, a pivot chart, and we do want it to be a clustered column. Let's go OK, and there we go. So let's just grab all of them for now. Control X, let's paste them into here, onto our new table. They all came across, yep, they did, good. I'll just grab them all, and then let's go format. I can't change it, it's a shame. I can't, okay, so I'll do one at a time. So click on one, we go format, shape fill is black. We'll keep an outline on these, for example. Let's get rid of the field buttons. We don't need a header. Get rid of that. Probably should make that text a bit wider actually as well. The same for this here too. Just make it white so it pops a bit more. Let's do this one. Format, black. Get rid of the field buttons. Get rid of the total. And make that white. And then same for this one. Format, black. Get rid of the buttons, hide all, get rid of the header, make that white. There we go. And then the last one, we'll move this will go over here. Same thing again, get rid of the black. Let's get rid of the buttons, and let's just make some of this text white, just so it's a bit more, pops a bit better. And we really should format that too, but if we actually go back here, I can actually format it here too. So if I go format cells, make it currency, and I'll drop currency, I'll drop the 2 decimal places, and we'll do it here as well. Format cells, I want it to be currency, I'll drop those, and let's just do it here as well. Format cells. currency, and we drop the decimals. So now when we go back here, yes, it's updated the format of the axis, just makes it easier. So now we need to squish these things down into the bottom. So let's just move them down here. We need to do some squishing so everything fits. But again, you can play with this to however you desire, really. Squish it up a bit more. This one here. Now, I do really want to leave quite a bit of space for the actual the bar chart too, because I do find I use that quite a bit actually. So I will squish these up quite a bit. Probably could even go a little bit smaller, to be honest. If I do that, I might be able to just squash it a little bit more. So you can, play with these and resize and move, and you can do it to however you like, really. I'm just doing it quick because I don't want to spend too much time on faffing around with formatting. But you get the idea of what we're doing. And then this one here is quite a big one. It probably doesn't have quite enough space left for how much I use it, but that's okay. We can play with it later. So, and what I'll do is I will put this on top. I'll move the chart across so it takes up all the space. I will actually make the back black just so it pops, and I'll make the font white. Just so that pops out a bit better as well. There we go. Again, you could actually rename that to be just a bit neater as well, but I'll just leave it like that for now. So that is pretty much our first tab, but we still need to actually remember link to slices. So we go back to each slicer, click on slicer, report connections, and now this time you see all the other pivot tables have actually appeared. So now we can actually just click them all because they're all in that capital connection sheet. And you'll see now, if I just pick on, say, dividend and finance, see how now it's updating all of the charts in one go, so it's all linked. So obviously we need to do the same for each of the slices. We'll do report connections here, grab those, and then grab this one, report connections, link all of those. There we go, and then the last one, report connections. There we go. So it works. That's dashboard number 1, done and dusted beautifully. Okay, so let's now start working on the second dashboard, which is our dividends. Oh, sorry, no. Before we do that, actually, we need to put in these values here. So they're sort of its core metrics. So let's just do that now quickly, actually. So what we can do, so we know, for example, that we want to know, well, how much have we total purchase? We know the current value, and we want to know the gain loss. Let's do that actually in dollars, and then we'll do a gain loss in percent, because you might want to show both on yours, for example, or just percentage. So let's do that. Now, pretty straightforward, really. All we need to do is, for total purchase, it's just really the sum of that, which gives me that value there. And then the current value is going to be just the sum of this. And what's great, you'll see it changes, which is fantastic. As we filter the table, it will change. And then the gain loss is really just the purchase. So it's the current value minus the purchase, because it's negative. Why is that saying 41,000? Oh, because because I deleted some before, that's why, but that's okay. And then percentage-wise, what we need to do is just, you know why? Because I haven't actually done the exchange rate conversions properly, so that's why. But that's why it's different. But it's correct, but it's just different to what I was expecting. It's calculating it correctly from this table. And then percentage-wise, all we need to really do here is just do the gain loss divided by the purchase, and that will give us a percentage difference, which here is 17%. So what we can do now is go back to capital, and we just go in here, edit text, and we just go plus, actually equals, sorry, equals. We want to grab it from here, which is this number here. Oh, sorry, that did not work. So we want to go equals this value here. And then you'll see what it does is it brings through the actual value. So let's just center that. And why is that over there? Format shape, text options, middle, horizontal. Oh, that's of course, that's why, because I hadn't picked the actual box. Okay, so let's do the same for current value. So it's going to be equals, go over here, pick on that, and there we go. Let's center and center. And then for gain loss, we do exactly the same thing. We just go equals, and then in here, and then let's pick the percentage one, and then we'll do exactly the same thing again as middle. Now, just so it looks the same, let's actually just change the font to be blue, and let's make it maybe, I don't know, 14 maybe? Bold? Yeah, let's do that. That looks great actually. So let's make it 14 blue text and bold. Let's grab the actual text and go make it 14 point blue and bold. And there we go. That is the, what's great too, if you notice, click on Dividend, see how it changes that value as well, because it's filtering out the pivot table. So it's telling me for each one how it performs in our top metrics as well. There we go. That is the first dashboard done and dusted. Let's now move on to the second one. Okay, so now let's do the dividends dashboard. So for dividends, now what we can do is, let's actually just do the same thing we did before with the black. Let's just pick the black background, and then what we can actually do is we can actually just grab the what we want from here. I'll just grab that, and I'll grab the blue bar as well. Control C, and then Control V. And then if I keep it all grouped, move it up to the top right corner. You see now it's in exactly the same spot as the other one, but we obviously want to move this. In fact, what I should do is, let me just leave that where it is for a second. I need to change this to be white font, otherwise it will vanish because it's currently blue. And then I grab this, then I'm just going to right arrow it across. And just put it in the middle, so about there. And if I just do send back one, and then send that to the back, actually it's even easier. Oh, and that font's white, so I need to make that font blue now, so that stands out. There we go. Dividends, isn't it? Dividends, there we go. So that white box is pretty much in the middle. So you can see now what's great is that between the two it looks identical, the header bar, and we'll do some linking later between them. We'll do the hyperlinks later, but for now that's looking pretty good. Okay, so now we're going to use our forecast dividend tab that we created before, which is currently empty. So we're going to create a, using the portfolio tab again, we're going to create a new pivot table, and let's stick this one into the top left hand corner, forecast dividend. So there we go. Okay, and there it is. Now on this one, it's actually going to be quite similar in that we're going to have thematic sector first and then the share name, and I will actually just change that to be tabular, just I prefer it that way. And then over here, instead of doing capital, this time we're going to be focusing on yield. So what I'll do is I'll use my less than 5 and greater than 5 columns, just so we can colour them up. Now it's not count. I obviously want it to be the sum because we know it's only one value. So it's one value per row, right? So it's the sum and then the sum, not the count. And then if I then format these into percentage, let's do it to 1 decimal place, just because rounding is probably not enough. There we go. So now we've got the two values. Now I'm just going to also get rid of the totals. So let's get rid of the totals and the subtotals, and there we go. It's looking pretty good. So now what we can do is let's now create our pivot chart. Now we want it to be the same as the other one. So the clustered column chart, here we go. I'll grab that, Control X, move that across here. And again, we're going to be using a slicer, so I don't want it to be all the way across, but this will be the bulk of well, at least over a third of this screen. So let me just close that for a second. I want it to go pretty much to about there, probably. And let's just format this up by getting rid of the background. Let's making the font nice and white so it pops a bit better. Make this percentage. I might actually round this as well, format axis, and just make it to 0 decimal places, just so it's a bit neater. Let's get rid of the actual little extra field buttons, hide all of those. Let's move this up to the top. We'll make the back of that is actually black, so it stands in front, and let's make the font white, just so it stands out a little bit better. And then we'll move the whole chart across so it fills up the whole space that we have. Definitely should move it down a bit so we get more of the actual names in as well too. So probably about there. It's looking pretty good. So let's grab the slicer now while we're here too. So we'll go back here, click on the pivot table, analyze, and we'll go insert slicer. Now we want it to be the thematic sector is what we want really here. And you can choose others if you want to, like you might want to say, let's actually have region as well, for example, or type or whatever you want, but let's just choose these two for the sake of argument. We're going to format these to be the same as the other one, which I think I used those. We're going to get rid of the headers, so slicer settings, no heading, and get rid of that box. Do the same here, slicer settings, no header, drop that box. I'll then grab them both, Control X, and let's stick them over here. Put that up there, grab this, bring it down there. That needs to be extended so there's no bar. Looks good. Move this one up so it's just under it. Try and line it up. There we go. Move this up to there. Now I'm just going to move, actually I'll slide these in a little bit so we're not maximising our dashboard space. There we go. And now we'll move this across just so it's there. Pretty happy with that. I might actually just move it down a tiny bit just because I do want to get a heading in. So let's just grab this heading. You know, you might choose not to have headings because obviously you've created the dashboard so you know what they are, but and let's just put this here, there, and let's just call this one forecast dividend, and I'll do percent because this table is showing a percentage of dividend yield. Let's make that white just so it's a bit neater. Squash this up a little bit. There we go. Looking pretty good. So there we go with that. Now we also, what I do like having over here is just the top 15 shares by forecast dividend. So what we can do is actually, if we go back into here, so we want to grab again from the portfolio, sorry. So we go insert pivot table from table range, existing worksheet, and let's just stick this, let's just put it over here for now. So, okay, now what we want this to be is we want this to be share name as our rows, and we want it to be the actual dividend paid, because this table here focuses on the actual yield, whereas this table here, I want it to look at how much actual dividend am I receiving. So obviously if I have a larger holder, I'm going to get a proportionately more, a higher level of dividend for the same dividend yield than a smaller holding, obviously. So that's that there. Now, I'll just zoom out a little bit so we can see more of the table. Now, what we need to do is we need to go into here, and I think it's in here. No, it's value filters, and let's go top 10, but I actually want to do top 15, I think, and it's doing it by sum of forecast dividends, which is pretty good. So now it's showing me the top 15. Maybe you want to show the top 20. It's entirely up to you. I am just going to filter this by to my currency, format cells, currency. Let's just do it to the roundest dollar. And there we go. So now if I insert a new chart, and I want this to be, actually no, what I want to do is do it, sorry, yes I do. I want to do it as a bar chart in this format here. So, and so we've created the chart that we want to do. We can actually also just click on the values and just go sort from largest to smallest. No, smallest to largest because it's the reverse. No, sorry, smallest to largest. There we go. So now it's showing me the smallest to largest top 15. So let's get rid of that. Let's also get rid of the buttons. I don't like the buttons, and we don't need the heading either. So now let's copy that, Control X, we'll grab that across to here, and let's just slot that into this little spot here. So I want that to fit there, and let's have it go all the way to the bottom. We could have actually had more than 15, to be honest, just the space we have there. You could do top 20 or whatever it is that you like. Let's just try and get this formatted as best as we can. I might actually move this across a little bit more just to get a bit more space. That looks pretty good. Yep. So now if we again do the formatting, make it black, make the text white just so it pops, and there we go. And then we can grab this as well, actually. Just duplicate it, Control D, bring this across here, and this is top 15 shares by dividend, and it's in dollars, not in percentage, so that's why it's a bit different. So we also want to do quickly on the slices. Let's just link them both up together. Slices, sorry, not that one. Port connections. Now we only want to get this forecast dividend one, not the ones from Capital, because otherwise it'll be changing all the tables, which you could do if you wanted to actually, but I quite like keeping each one separate. So now if I do that, you see if I pick Australia, it will give me the top 15 shares in Australia by dividend and the top 15, sorry, it'll give me all my Australian shares by yield. Just resize that a little bit, just fiddle around with the formatting a tiny bit. If I do USA, and there's my top 15 dividends paid by USA companies, and then there's my forecast yields there. You see the vast majority of buy in the US are actually dividend plays, which is not surprising that most of them are actually above 5%. So there we go. So that's looking pretty good actually. So pretty happy with that. Looks looking really good. Now the last table I'd like to have down here is just how many dividends we actually have received. I quite like having that as well. So what we'll do is we'll go into our dividends received tab. And let's do a new pivot table from table range, and we'll stick this also into the forecast dividend tab, and let's stick it down here. And then what we want to do with this one is we want this to really just be the total by month of dividend really. So what we can do is we want it to be let's do year as the first row, and then we'll do month because they're the two that we actually generated. I will convert it to be tabular. So report layout, tabular form, that's better. So obviously all of my dividends are currently just in the one year, but obviously because we're doing this for the longer term, they will, I'm just turning off all the subtitles, it will obviously flow over into 2023. And then for values, what we want is we want the actual amounts. That's the amount of dividends that we got paid. So you can see here what this is doing is now it's giving me the actual amount of dividends that I actually received in that month. So if I go into currency, let's do that. And now what we can do is if we create now a pivot table from this chart, and you can do it however you like really here. I think I did mine as a dots on a map in my example, but again you can do whatever you like, and you might want to, for example, format these where are we? Oops, if I want to format, oh no, not the data point, it's the whole thing. I want to format data series. So if I go to marker here, I can actually make the marker much bigger, you see. Let's do, I don't know, 10 or something. What's 10 look like? I want it even bigger. Let's go big, let's go 20. There we go, so 20, see, so it looks a bit better. Let's get rid of a total, because we know what this is. We can get rid of the key or legend, we don't need that. That looks pretty good. Let me Control X that, bring it across here. Let's stick this down the bottom. I want it to sit just here, so let's shrink it down and then bring it all the way across to here. And again, we'll change the formatting so it's black. Let's make the white pop a bit better. There and there, looks way better. We can format this just to get rid of the, in fact actually we can just do it here. If we just do into here and go format cells, and just make that 0, because we don't really care about cents really. Although every cent does add up, of course. There we go, and then we make the bottom white, and that is looking pretty cool. And let's get rid of those little buttons. Oops, turn those buttons off, and then there we go. Look at that. Now the only negative here, and if anyone does have the solution to this, please let me know. Because they're from they're pivot tables from different sources. The slices don't link. I'm sure there is a way, and I might do a bit of research and find out. But ideally, you'd click on Australia, and it will actually change the dividends paid to only show Australia. But because these two are linked from the same pivot table, from the same source, they will they slice, whereas the bottom one doesn't. But I'm okay with that because really, how much am I being paid every month is something I definitely want to be aware of. So I'm pretty happy with how that all works, and that's looking pretty good. So the last thing really we need to do at the top here is just work out our metrics that we want to follow. So I'll move that across to there, and let's just duplicate that and stick that there. So we want this one here to be the forecast yield, and we want this here to be the actual yield. There we go. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So what we can do now is obviously we need to update these values. So let's go back into here. So to update these values, all we need to do really is just do total that we've received. So we know that's just going to be the sum of this pivot table here, which will give me that amount, and then months invested. So we need to just work out, because obviously I haven't invested for the whole year, right? So that 5,400 is only over part of the year. So I'll use a count function for now, and I'm just going to count how many are actually there. So that gives me, why did that not work? Actually, you know what I can do? I'm actually going to move this pivot table, just so we can be a bit clever about this, over to here. So, and let's just move this up here. This will work better actually if we do it this way, and you'll see why in a second. So what we can do now is we actually just do total. I'm just going to sum the entire column because I know that that's the total. And then for this, I'm just going to go count the number of months that we've invested, or you could do sum or month, doesn't really matter, the same thing. That now Why is that not working? Oh, haha, because I need to use count A is the reason why as a function. So that gives me 9, but we know it's counting month as well. So let's just take away 1 for the header. So that's 8 months. So now if I do total invested, the total invested, now I need to get that from the other spreadsheet. So I'm just going to do a link back to here, and I know it's this purchase amount there. So then now I can work out the current yield. So is just simply going to be current yield. So it's going to be the total dividends received divided by, oops, I've got to do it here, don't I? That's actually amount invested, sorry, amount invested. Then this here is the current yield. I'm so sorry, I typed over the cell. So current yield we got from the other tab. The current yield, all we need to do is divide the total divided by the current yield. But remember, that's assuming that's over a 12-month period. So we also need to put that in some brackets just to make it really clear. But I do want to multiply it now by the months invested divided by 12 for the year. So that gives me my current yield, which is 1.5%. And then, which is the actual yield, obviously, which is, again, going to lag pretty horribly because I've only been investing for 8 months, and some shares I've bought only paid a dividend once every 6 months. So that will definitely lag quite a bit behind my, I guess, my ongoing yield. So go back into here. Now, actual yield, what I want to do is I want to change this now to equal forecast dividend. I want that number there. Okay, so what we need to do now is work out our actual forecast dividend, which is probably a better indicator because it's obviously going to be to avoid that trailing effect that I've got. So all I really need to do is just sum from our portfolio column is this one here, is column Q, because this column Q is our actual forecast dividend based on our yields and holdings. So if I just do that, it will give me our forecast dividend of 13,000. Now, what I can do is do forecast monthly, forecast weekly, forecast daily. And then if we do one down here, forecast yield. So obviously if that's here, to get monthly, I literally have to divide it by 12. To get weekly, I just divide it by 52. And to get daily, I just divide it by 365. And there we go. So that's our daily, weekly, monthly dividends. Now, all we need to do now is divide our dividend divided by our total amount invested. So what I can do is I can literally just go the dividend, forecast dividend, divided by our actual amount invested up here, which will give me a 5.6% yield. So now I can go back to our dividends tab and then change this to equal from here our forecast yield of 5.6%. Okay, so now we're moving on to the passive dividend tab. So what we'll do is first of all, let's just grab all of the header stuff that we want to bring across. I'll bring across one of those, Control C, Control V, and I'll just move it into the top left corner. We also need to actually black out the background. So let's just go across, go down, and make all of that black. Which is here. There we go. So, and we do also need to just quickly change that to be blue, and we want the white box, not the dividends tab. We move that across. We should then get it there. Oops, we didn't change this, which now needs to go back to being white. Look, while we're here, why don't we set up the links as well? So if I just click on capital, I can actually do a link and then place in this document. So I want that to go to capital. Probably should have done this at the start actually, because it saves me having to do it multiple times. So that's okay. And I'll do it again here. Right click, link, capital. And then see what's pretty cool now is now when I click on capital, it takes me back to capital. See what I mean? So if I do the same here for passive, I go link and I now pick passive. And now when I click on passive, you see it takes me across to the passive tab with the white indicator box over it. So it's, and obviously it needs to do that for all of them. I won't do it because it's save time, but that's effectively how you do it. So now we go across to our passive income tab. Now I am working on a better way of doing this, but this might be a bit of a placeholder, and I'll definitely publish another video on if I improve on this, and I think I will, because it's not the best way, but it's a way for now anyway. So all I've done really is I've just got a year and date column. So basically for each year and for each date, basically just going down through the 12 months and down until 2030. So 2032, because 2032 is when I want to be definitely not longer working anymore. So that's my goal. So I've kind of worked all of this around it being, that's the end. So obviously you need to be fairly aggressive, as you'll see. So this column here, what I do is I do market value. Now I will automate this at some point, but for now all I'm doing really is just typing in at the end of the month what my market value is. So that's been my historic market value at the end of each month for this year. That's where I've got it to at the moment. And then I've also do a purchase amount. So what I do then is I also have a column that, and I will convert this to a table in a minute, but that basically is a table. It just has the actual purchase amount that I've made each month. So it's obviously, they just add effectively. So what you could actually do is just, I did start with that amount. So all I'm really doing is I've said I bought that much in that month. I didn't buy anything in this month. The market value obviously fluctuates around based on that. And now I have a column here called forecast investment, which then what this does is this then is how much money extra I'm planning on putting in each month. So the way it works out is I need to do about 11,500 a month, which is very ambitious, I must say, but we'll see how we go. Basically, I'll be eating rice and noodles for a little bit, but to get me to my goal, that's pretty much what I need to find a month to put in. So, and then what I'll do here is I'll have an actual invested column. So that will help me then track it. So I know what I have actually invested. So and this will obviously just grow on from the previous one. So all I'm doing here really is just saying in that month I invested that 7.6, and then all I'm doing here is just doing a plus my previous months and then whatever I've purchased that month. And if I copy that down, you'll see what it does. It basically gets me to where I am with my actual invested amount. Now I am going to just add that from above, just for now, because I want to be able to play around with the totals. So I'll go to the bottom here, and we can see, so that's basically me trying. So if I change that to be, say, 15,000, it will change all of my subsequent months to be that amount as well. Now, the way I'm doing it at the moment is pretty simple, but is I'm just using a dividend rate. So I know my dividends are returning about 5.6% dividend. So all I'm doing for now, to keep this really simple, is I'm just basically doing how much I've actually invested multiplied by my dividend rate, F4 to fix it to that cell, divided by 12. So I'm getting that obviously per month effectively. So if I just bring this down here, what it will do is then it'll actually just work it out based on that. Now, one thing that happens, obviously then here I'm start going to forecast invest. So what I need to do is, do a new column actually in here. So this is my actual invested. Now this is forecast invested here. So forecast invested. Oops. So what this does, this basically tracks how much I think I'm going to actually have invested in a cumulative fashion. So what I'll do is I'll just go that amount there plus that amount there, and then if I copy that down, it'll then give me my forecast line. That's obviously not working because I need to move that across to there. So it picks up on that amount there. So if I copy that down, see now that's actually doing, so that's adding to my actual invested, adding the 11,500 my forecast onto this, and then assuming that I keep investing that every month. So what I'll need to do is I'll need to then change this here to actually look at my forecast invested, not my actual, to get my actual dividend. And I'll copy this down, and we'll see down here we're getting to 7,500 a month, which would be absolutely fantastic. And if I now format the cells, let's go into currency, let's get rid of the decimals. So now that's my dividend. Now, what I do here is I do my actual, it's called target. So my target here, now my target is actually, let's just say for argument's sake that it's 3.5, let's say it's 7,000 a month is my, 7,500 a month is my target, is my actual target. So what I can do now is and obviously you choose whatever it is that you think you'd like. And now this ignores inflation, it ignores a whole lot of things that don't come into play. But what I'm arguing with myself is that the inflation is counteracted by the dividend, by the capital growth. Because obviously here I'm only looking at my actual invested amount. So what I'm assuming is that any inflation, inflation is counteracted by capital growth of the share portfolio. So the two counteract, and therefore it's I guess being consistent. So what I can do now is if I divide my total dividend per month by my target per month, it then gives me a percentage of how close I am to my target. So you can see when I started back in January, I hadn't invested much. And sorry, let me just also fix the target with an F4. And if I copy it down again, what you'll see now is it's obviously growing up. So I'm currently sitting around 14.4% of my target. And if I go down the bottom here, you can see, there we go, wow. And obviously I've played with this number here to get this to 100. So by the end of 2032, my goal is definitely to be at 100% of my salary replacement. So that's pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with that. So what we can do now is we can actually do a bit of a chart. So if I grab all of this, and if I insert a chart, so let's do it as a line chart for now. Now, oh, what have I done? Let me just Control Z that, sorry. Let me go into here. I've somehow created a new chart. So let me go insert a chart. I want it to be a line chart. Yep, here we go. Obviously I'd inserted a pivot chart, which we don't want. So now we want to get rid of a few of these columns. So let's take out from this one, we don't want market value, we don't want purchase amount, we don't want forecast invest, we want actual invested, we want forecast invested, and we want target for now, okay? So where did that chart go? Here it is here. So let me just grab this across into our passive tab. So here it is here. So what we'll do is we're going to have two charts on here. One is going to focus on the capital side of things. So let me, in fact, I'm just going to duplicate, I'll copy the chart, this chart below. Let me, delete my duplicated one, which I could have actually duplicated. So this top one will have focused on the dividend, for example. So if I go into select data, so I don't care in this one about how much I've actually invested, but I do care about I don't want dividend either. Sorry, let me just get rid of, I don't need market data either. So what is this showing me? This is showing my dividend. So let me get rid of that as well. Dividend. So now you see what it's doing. This is showing me my target. So what I can do, if I go back into my other chart, what I might actually do then is have actual as my actual thing here. So obviously up until this point my actual is my target, because obviously I've already been investing for some time, so I'll just grab that for now. But what I'll do is I will then add on obviously my actual versus my target. So next month, let's say I haven't done great in November in terms of investing. I've only put in $1,500. The joy of birthdays and Christmas, but that's okay. So I'll obviously put in my actual amount there when I actually do get it. So let me go back to my table here. I'm just going to add in a new series name, which will be actual, and then I will grab from this if I can delete it. Yep, the series values from here, and I'll grab this all the way down to the bottom. And then if I do that, so now you'll see what's happened now is my actual line, the orange line is obviously overlapping because it's current, but over time you'll see that they'll obviously start to diverge. Hopefully the actual will actually increase higher, but if that happens, that will be absolutely amazing and highly unlikely, but we can hope for the best. So go into format, let's make that black. Let's now change our fonts to be white. Make this to be white over here as well. Let's just format the axis and get rid of the decimal place there. Make that 0. And I will keep my little legend. Let's make that white. And that looks pretty good. So this will be great. So now I'll be able to track how I'm actually going against my target of reaching 100% by December 2032. I might actually also just format this axis and make that just a total of 1, just so it stops at 100%. Just to make the chart a bit bigger. And that looks pretty cool. I could also, if I wanted to, make the lines a bit bigger or something. So why don't I make my actual maybe a bit wider. That looks pretty cool, I reckon. Yeah, that looks good. I'm happy with that. So I might just also give this a black background just so it pops a bit better. Just so it stands out above the chart lines. There we go. So for the one below, now this will be focused on capital instead of dividends. So I want to move that up a little bit. Let's share the spare space. Move that across a little bit. And we delete the header. Now on this one, I want to focus on the actual capital, the market, the actual invested. I don't need to worry about that. I don't need to worry about that. And I think that will give me the market value, actual invested, and forecast invested, which is pretty good. So I'm going to change this line just because it's a very similar color to the other one. I might actually make this green actually, just so green's kind of, no, not green, maybe let's make it purple perhaps. Yeah, purple, perfect. And then it's just, I might do the same here as well, make this purple too, just so they match. So I know my forecast is purple. Let's format the chart, get rid of the background, make the text white just so it all pops, and move the legend to the top, make it white, fill out the box just so it stands out from the grid lines a bit better. Looks pretty good. Looking pretty good. So again here what this will do, this will track my actual invested amount versus the actual market value and then the forecast invested. And if we just go back here, what we can do is we just have to, just for now, copy the forecast invested onto that, and then that way the charts will see a match up now. So then market value, obviously in November I'll put in my new market value for the blue line there. And there we go, so that's pretty cool. So I could actually do orange, why don't I do this as yellow? That way the all of my actuals on here are actually yellow. So data series, and if I make that yellow, then that way you see all my yellow is my actuals, purple's my forecast, And the blue line here is just tracking, I guess, the market value versus my forecast invested value. Just so hopefully, again, the blue line is definitely above the yellow, and hopefully above the purple. And that's pretty good. So I'm really happy with that. It's looking excellent. So the other one here, so my metric for this page really is my freedom percent. So how percent free am I from having to work a 9-to-5 job? So I love this number. It really motivates me, and I find it absolutely fantastic for share investing. So what we need to do is we need to convert this number into my passive. So what we do is we basically can just do up here, just do a little, is go into here, and we just do a max of this entire range, which will obviously the max will be the latest because it's hopefully only ever going up. And that will give me my my actual number that I'm after. I go across to here, I can then just go equals, and then passive income, and then grab that number from there. And then there we go. And if I also make that the same blue, the same font, just so it all looks nice and neat. There we go. And then I think I had it at 14. Blue and then bold, and there we go. So look at that. So that looks pretty cool. Now the last thing actually what I might do is just up here I might actually just shift this across a little bit, and let's just grab these two, Control D, and just because I like to have this on this dashboard as well, is let's just do yearly, that will be monthly, weekly, daily. So yearly, monthly, weekly, and then here we have daily. Oops. Daily. Now, pretty simple. We literally just, we've already done all the calculations, so we go back to here. Yearly number is here. The monthly is this one here. The weekly is this one here. And the daily is this one here. So let's just format these actually so they're in a better format, so that way the formats carry through. Format cells, currency, and I'm just going to do it to the nearest dollar. Oops, format cells, but in currency. So currency, nearest dollar, and then that will all carry through into here. We obviously need to, can I do that? Yes, I can. I can do them all at once. So 14 bold, and our Abadi font, I missed this one. So we go 14, bold. There we go. So now it's got my yearly, monthly, weekly, daily dividends. And then what I can do below is I can actually do as well in my actual dividends. So this table actually is our actuals, right? So why don't we just move this across into our actual dividend table? Just looks a bit neater over here. So apologies for putting that in the wrong spot earlier. But now that's all about forecast dividends. And let's just tighten this up a little bit. Because what's happened now is I need to move this over to here and stick this here. And so now the total is just the sum of that row. The months invested is just the count of that row minus the 1, and then that doesn't change and that doesn't change. They all stay the same. So what we can do now is do a total for a 2022 total, 2023, and just to be quickly, we can literally just do, because we know it's going to be those cells there, obviously for December. We could do a sum if and then look at the values over here if we wanted to. But for now, I'm just to be quick, I'll just do it this way. So the actual dividends received in 2022 so far are that number there. And if we go back into here and I grab this one, I can then put this down here. And then this is 2022 actual. In fact, why don't we just do 2022 there? And what we can do is just put a little header up here, and let's call this actual dividends. And then if I just grab these here, I can slide them down a tiny little bit, and then put that there. And then up here, I can just have this as forecast. Forecast dividends. There we go. So now I've got my forecast dividends metrics, and then here I've got my actual dividends. Obviously, it's not 36, so I'll just go back in here and update that. And it's going to be that number there. And we just have to reformat that because it loses its format every time. And then away we go. And I think now we are done. If I make that blue, there we go. So that's pretty cool. So now we've finished the dashboard. We've got our capital tab. We've got our dividends tab. That's all works well. And we've got now our passive income tab as well. So that's pretty much it. Obviously, you'd probably want to finish linking up the links here. So just finish off those ones. And then now we can jump between dashboards pretty well. So that's it. So thanks for watching. I hope it was enjoyable, if not helpful, or helpful, if not enjoyable. And if you've got any questions, please let me know. I will do another video when I actually do update my passive income forecasting method, but that will hopefully be soon. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed, and thank you for listening. Bye.